Story 1. Writing. The House Across Maple Street. My name is Ethan, and this happened in the fall of 2023 when my wife Sarah and I moved to a quiet neighborhood outside of Columbus, Ohio. The neighborhood looked perfect. Tree-lined streets, clean lawns, kids riding bicycles, the kind of place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. At least that's what we thought. The house we bought sat at the end of a cul-de-sac. Across the street stood an old blue house that seemed strangely out of place. The paint was faded, the porch sagged slightly, and every window remained covered by thick curtains. The real estate agent told us an elderly man lived there alone. Quiet fellow, she said. That was the first lie. For the first 2 weeks everything felt normal. Then Sarah noticed someone standing behind one of the curtains. At first she thought it was the owner, but the figure wasn't moving. It simply stood there, watching. The next morning the figure was gone. We laughed it off. Then it appeared again, and again, always in a different window, always standing perfectly still. One evening I decided to wave. The figure immediately disappeared. That should have relieved me. Instead, it made my stomach drop, because it moved far too quickly, almost as if it had been waiting for me to notice. A few nights later I woke up around 3 a.m. Something felt wrong. The room was silent, too silent. Then I heard it. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Not on the front door, not downstairs, on the bedroom window. Our bedroom was on the second floor. No tree reached that window, no ladder stood outside, yet someone had knocked. I rushed to the glass. Nothing. The yard below was empty. I searched the entire property with a flashlight. Nothing. The next morning I found muddy footprints beneath the window. Only one set, leading toward the street, not away from it, toward the blue house. Over the next month things became worse. Packages disappeared. Motion lights turned on for no reason. The feeling of being watched never left. One afternoon I finally met the old man from across the street. His name was Walter. He looked harmless, thin, gray-haired, friendly smile, but the moment he learned our names, his smile vanished. He stared at Sarah for several seconds, then quietly said, "You should leave before winter." I laughed nervously. "What happens in winter?" Walter didn't answer. He simply walked away. That night we found a note taped to our mailbox. It contained only 4 words. "He knows you moved in." No signature, no explanation. Sarah wanted to call the police. I agreed. The officers took the note but had no suspects. Weeks passed. Then Halloween arrived. The neighborhood organized a small gathering. Families filled the street. Music played. Children wore costumes. For the first time since moving there, we felt relaxed. Then Walter appeared. He wasn't wearing a costume. He looked terrified. He grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "Lock your doors tonight." Before I could ask why, he hurried away. At exactly 11:47 p.m., every light in the blue house turned on. Every single one. We watched from our bedroom. A silhouette appeared in the upstairs window. Then another. Then another. There should have been only one person living there, but we counted 7 figures, all standing perfectly still, watching our house. Sarah whispered, "Who are they?" I didn't answer, because one of the figures slowly raised its arm, and pointed directly at us. The next morning the blue house was dark again. We crossed the street and knocked. No answer. The door was unlocked. Inside, the house was empty. No furniture, no food, no signs anyone had lived there for years. Yet in the dust-covered living room stood 7 wooden chairs arranged in a circle. And on the wall someone had written a sentence in black paint. We finally found them. At that moment footsteps echoed upstairs. Slow, heavy, deliberate. And they were coming toward the staircase. Story 2. The tenant in Unit 14. My name is Ryan, and this happened while I was living in a small apartment complex in Phoenix, Arizona. The building wasn't special. 3 floors, 20 apartments, mostly working adults. I lived alone in Unit 12. Across the hallway was Unit 14. For almost 6 months it remained empty. Then a new tenant moved in. Or at least that's what management told us. The strange thing was that nobody ever saw him. Packages appeared outside the door. Food deliveries arrived daily. Lights glowed beneath the doorway every night. But no one entered, and no one left. At first I ignored it. People are private. That wasn't my business. Then the noises started. Every night around 2:14 a.m., something dragged across the floor. not for a few seconds, for hours. A slow scraping sound, back and forth, like furniture being moved endlessly. The tenant downstairs complained. Management investigated. The noise stopped whenever someone approached Unit 14. Eventually people gave up. One evening I came home late. As I stepped off the elevator, I noticed the door to Unit 14 standing slightly open, only an inch. A faint yellow light glowed from inside. I heard breathing, heavy breathing, then a voice whispered, "Is someone there?" I froze. The voice sounded weak, almost frightened. I answered carefully, "Yeah, I'm your neighbor." Silence. Then, "Don't let him know you're talking to me." The door slammed shut. I stood there for several seconds. I wasn't sure what I had just heard. The next morning management claimed only one tenant lived in Unit 14. A man named Michael. No one else. That should have ended the mystery. Instead, things got worse. 3 nights later I woke up to someone knocking on my apartment door. The clock read 2:14 a.m. Exactly. I checked the peephole. Nobody. Then I heard a whisper, right beside the door, "Help me." My blood ran cold. The voice sounded identical to the one from Unit 14. I opened the door. The hallway was empty, except for a small piece of paper on the floor. Written in shaky handwriting were 3 words, "Basement storage room." The building had a basement. Few residents ever went down there. The next afternoon curiosity got the better of me. I unlocked the storage area. Rows of metal cages filled the room. Dust covered everything. At the far end I found storage Unit 14. The lock had been cut. Inside sat an old wooden chair, a mattress, several empty water bottles, and dozens of pages covered in frantic writing. One sentence appeared again and again, "He won't let me leave." I immediately called management. They denied knowing anything about it. That night I heard screaming from across the hallway. Not loud, muffled, desperate. The sound lasted only a few seconds, then silence. Police arrived after several residents called. Unit 14 was opened. Nobody was inside. No furniture. No personal belongings. Nothing. The officers looked confused. Management looked terrified. One officer quietly asked, "How long has this apartment been vacant?" The manager answered, "About 8 months." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean vacant? Someone lives there." The manager stared at me. "No one has rented Unit 14 this year." Then how had packages appeared? Who was making the noises? Who had spoken to me? 3 days later the entire floor smelled rotten. Police returned. This time they searched the walls. Behind a maintenance panel hidden inside Unit 14 they discovered a narrow passage running through the building. Inside the passage they found evidence someone had been living there. Blankets, food wrappers, hundreds of photographs, pictures of every resident, including me. Most were taken while we slept. At the very end of the hidden passage officers found a steel door. The lock had been broken from the inside. Beyond it stretched an abandoned utility tunnel leading under the city. Whoever had been living inside the walls escaped before police arrived. No one ever identified the person. No arrests were made. I moved out a month later, but before leaving, I checked my mailbox one last time. Inside was a single photograph. It showed me sleeping in my apartment. The picture had been taken the night before, after police had already searched the building. On the back someone had written, "Thank you for noticing me. The neighbor who knew our names. My name is Tyler. And this happened in the summer of 2022 when my wife Emily and I moved into a small neighborhood outside Nashville, Tennessee. We had been saving for years to buy our first home. It wasn't anything fancy, just a simple 2-story house on a quiet street with a small front porch and a fenced backyard. To us, though, it felt like a dream come true. The neighborhood seemed peaceful. Kids rode bikes in the evenings. People walked their dogs after dinner. Neighbors waved when they passed. Everything felt normal, at least for the first week. The house directly across from ours belonged to an older man. We never saw him outside. His lawn was always perfectly trimmed. His mailbox was always empty. His porch light stayed on every night. But nobody ever seemed to come or go. One evening Emily noticed movement behind one of his front windows. She pointed it out while we were unloading groceries. A man stood behind the curtain, completely still, watching us. The moment he realized we had noticed him, he stepped away. Neither of us thought much about it. People are curious about new neighbors. That was understandable, but over the following weeks, it kept happening. Every day, different window, same man, same expressionless face. always watching, never waving, never smiling. One Saturday morning I finally decided to introduce myself. I walked across the street and knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again. Nothing. Yet I could hear movement inside. The floor creaked. Something shifted. Someone was definitely home. After a minute I gave up and walked away. As I reached the sidewalk, I felt eyes on me. I turned around. The curtain moved slightly. Someone was peeking out, watching me leave. That night Emily woke me up around 2 a.m. She said she heard footsteps outside. I got out of bed and checked the front window. At first I didn't see anything. Then I noticed a figure standing in the middle of our yard. A man, completely motionless, staring directly at our house. I grabbed my phone. The second I moved, he turned around and walked away into the darkness. By the time I got outside, he was gone. The next morning I found muddy footprints near our porch. Only one set. The prints came from the street, stopped directly below our bedroom window, then returned to the street. Emily wanted to call the police. I wasn't sure what I would even tell them. A guy stood in our yard. It sounded ridiculous, so we let it go. 3 nights later it happened again. This time the man stood closer, much closer, close enough that I could see his face. It was our neighbor, the man from across the street. The next morning he appeared at our door. For the first time ever, he introduced himself as Harold. He smiled politely, apologized for being shy, and somehow acted as if nothing strange had happened. His friendliness felt rehearsed, artificial, like someone pretending to be normal. Before leaving he said something odd. He looked at Emily and smiled. "Your mother called yesterday." Emily frowned. "My mother?" Harold nodded. "She said she's proud of you." Then he walked away. Emily's face turned pale. Her mother had died 4 years earlier. We didn't sleep much that night. The following week things became worse. Small things started disappearing. A garden tool, a package, a decorative lantern from the porch. Nothing valuable, just random objects. Then they started reappearing, in different places. One morning I found the missing lantern sitting on our kitchen counter. Inside the house. Neither of us had brought it inside. All the doors had been locked. Every window had been closed. I checked every room. Nothing appeared disturbed, but someone had been inside. I knew it. Emily knew it. The feeling of being watched became constant. Every creak in the house made us jump. Every shadow outside made us nervous. Then one night I woke up thirsty. The digital clock beside the bed read 3:17 a.m. As I sat up, I noticed something strange. The bedroom door was open. We always slept with it closed. Always. I stared at the dark hallway. Then I heard breathing. Slow, steady, coming from downstairs. Someone was inside our house. I quietly grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way. Emily stayed hidden in the bedroom while I locked the door. We listened. The footsteps moved through the living room, then the kitchen, then the stairs. Each step creaked. Closer, closer, closer. The footsteps stopped directly outside our bedroom. Silence filled the house. Then someone gently rattled the doorknob. Once, twice, 3 times. We sat frozen. Neither of us dared breathe. A minute later the footsteps retreated. By the time police arrived, whoever had been inside was gone. There were no signs of forced entry. No broken locks. No open windows. Nothing. The officers searched the property and found no one. But one officer discovered something hidden beneath our back porch. A small notebook. Inside were dozens of handwritten pages. Every page contained information about us. Our schedules. Where we worked. When we left home. When we returned. What groceries we bought. What time we turned off our lights. Someone had been watching us for months. The final page contained only one sentence. A sentence that still terrifies me. "I'll come inside again tomorrow night." And written underneath it, "Don't tell Harold."